If I'm expecting a consumer to part with 3,000 plus rupees from their pocket, I goddamn well better give them a solution that is worthy of that money. If you waited to launch something to perfection, then you've launched too late. Each product we've launched is our bestseller. Nothing can kill a startup worse than indigestion. That's too much funds. I started with, I think, 35 lakhs. That is the only capital I've invested in the business since then. I've not invested a penny more. And that's how the idea for Due was born. To be very frank, the industry is saturated. There's nothing you don't already have.
Awesome. So, super excited to welcome a very special guest today. This is Shamika, who's the founder and CEO of Due, but most importantly is also a school senior. And both of us went to Father Agnell's Vashi, which is this fantastic school in Mumbai. So she's done her law and then her master's from Duke, and then started this beauty brand that I'm sure a lot of you here use products from. My wife uses products of Due. My mom uses Due products.
Was my teacher at one point.
Yeah. So my mom actually taught you, and that's also a fact. So today our audience is slightly different. It's that audience that wants to start a D2C brand. Our first-time founders are probably thinking about where they should start this D2C brand in. Beauty is probably one of those options that they want to go deeper into. So today we can probably go deeper into just understanding that if suppose you were younger and were trying to build, say, a beauty brand from scratch, what is it that you would advise young founders to do? But firstly, I think thank you so much for coming here, taking out the time. You're going to be interacting with our students. There's a case that we have written. So excited to have this conversation and have you on the Mesa campus.
Very excited, Varun. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. This has been long due. So I'm really looking forward that I'm finally here and looking to a day forward of a lot of excitement and interaction with the students.
Cool. So let's just dive straight into it. My first question for you is what anyone would kind of think about, that you went from law to starting this beauty brand. What was that journey like? How did you kind of finalize that you wanted to do something in beauty?
So, like I was working in law for 6-7 years. In that 10-year frame of, right after I graduated from law school, I was very in and out of India. So I was living overseas for a few periods of time. When I finally came back to India, at that time, I saw this very common recurring behavior pattern in consumers in the tier 1 city, which is that every time someone's traveling overseas, they would be like, get me this XYZ stash of products from Sephora or Cult Beauty. This sort of and I would do that too. It gave me an insight that there is a hungry consumer for a certain type of a brand in India, but there is no homegrown brand that is satisfying that appetite for these consumers. They want high-performing, innovative formulas. They want very globally positioned products. They want aspirational branding, and that appetite for a premium brand is there. But at that time, 5 years ago, there was no brand in India sort of catering to those needs, and that is specifically the need or the gap I saw in the market, and that's the segment of consumers I wanted to build for. And that's how the idea for Due was born. But something that I was very clear on early on was that the industry today is very saturated, but it was saturated back then as well. So I didn't want to launch a brand that would kind of add to the landfill of products that's already there with a Me Too type of a copy-paste formula, 10% niacinamide serums, there are a gazillion of those. One thing we were clear on, that if we do launch a beauty brand, then our product solutions have to add value to the market, something that doesn't similar exist. And that's a philosophy we kept as an undercurrent to how we've built the brand. So we're 4 years into the market, and we have 4 primary SKUs. So we've launched one product a year. So we keep a very close pulse on the market, understanding what is at a very nuanced level that even a consumer may not think of that is missing from the market. But we try to observe it at that level and then create and cater beauty solutions that at a very nuanced level are solving something or adding some impact. Going into the specifics very quickly, there are amazing sunscreens out there in the market, especially India. India's market for sunscreen category is very, very advanced. We have really great formulation. So what is really missing? You have textures and sunscreens that feel like whatever you want today there is. So how could we further innovate this category? So we came up with an encapsulated texture and a blue colored sunscreen. Nobody, the world has not seen a blue colored sunscreen. And we came up with that. So that's to just give you an example to my point, that we look at innovations at a very nuanced level and further see how can we add an option to the Indian consumer? How can we give them a further value add than from what already exists in the market?
Yeah. What was the money that you invested? Where did you start from? Did you raise funding? You've not raised funding, I know that, but I just want to understand, how did you think about even funding this venture, so to speak?
So, I mean, something, you can never devalue the learnings or the upbringing that comes when you come from a middle class family. So when I wanted to start a business, I had some money saved up of my own and some I borrowed from my father. But I was very sure that I don't want to raise funds to kind of burn, which was the trend last 2-3 years that we've seen, raise funding, use them to burn to scale. I was like, if I launch it, I'm going to launch it with a lot of frugality. And when I know I hit PMF or there is value in what I have launched, then maybe if I want to raise, I will raise and, further steps. So I started with very little capital. I started with, I think, 35 lakhs. And when I first started the company 4 years back, and that is the only capital I've invested in the business since then. I've not invested a penny more, and we are bootstrapped and we're profitable because that financial discipline and frugality I was very specific on and bullish on from day one. So on day one, that was just me in my bedroom. I took the website live and, to now we've changed 2 offices. We have, 3 to 4 warehouses. Today, the craze to hit 100 CR in 2 years is so much, and there's undue pressure put on entrepreneurs sometimes by themselves, or if they take investment then by investors. That patience is very undervalued. And specifically in the premium segment, when you're building a brand in the premium segment, patience is very key, because you cannot accelerate too much, because then you're too available, and that's the opposite of a premium positioning.
Could you talk more about that discovery journey, because that's where I think most people get stuck. They've probably understood a broad problem that exists in society with the customers, but they're not able to narrow it down to say, what is that first solution that I kind of start off with? So could you kind of take us through that journey?
So there are 2 things. When I decided to launch a brand, where my brand is supposed to be positioned, that was a gap I found in the market. But my product strategy was different. So I saw that there's a space and a gap in the premium segment, and that's where I wanted to build the brand.
So that's something that you kind of subscribe to. That I'm going to build a premium brand.
Because that's where the options were not available in the country.
And this was before you kind of finalized the product.
Got
it. Okay.
I would say 50-50. Like my journey of starting Dew and product was at the same time. The market was flooded with active ingredients and a lot of single ingredient serums like vitamin C, niacinamide, peptides, hyaluronic acid. While that had democratized skincare a lot, it had also led to a acute increase in confusion amongst consumers. Like lay people, they would hear all these active ingredient names, but they would not know, how do I add all these into my routine? What goes first, what goes second, day and night, 7 steps, this, that. And I wanted to make a solution for this specific problem. So I went about creating a product that combined 11 active ingredients into one bottle. I'm like, declutter your routine. You use this one, and your serum category is sorted. Brands before that, and when I would interact with manufacturers and our labs and chemists, and I would be like, why hasn't a product like this been made? So it also goes against, and the insight that I got is that it also goes against a lot of businesses, because it reduces the number of SKUs. When they launch single ingredient serum, that many more SKUs and more business and cross-selling and all of that brands get. So nobody wanted at that time to do it. And my aim was I want to provide value through the product I launched. So I was and maybe I was naive. I didn't care, multiple SKUs. I was I want to make a product of value.
One quick question there. So usually, whether it's, I know this is beauty, but say it's tech startups. So any startups in general, people say launch very fast, right? But you took a bet where you spent 16 to 18 months on R&D. So what was the process like there? Overall, did you have faith that this was definitely going to work? Would you recommend that approach, or would you say retrospectively you would have, probably chosen another approach? Any thoughts on that?
So this is a very interesting question and something that I've also thought, because I've heard this, like most entrepreneurs will tell you and brand builders will tell you, if you waited to launch something to perfection, then you've launched too late.
Yeah, correct.
And I have a little bit of a contrarian view to that because I was playing in a premium segment category. There is less margin for errors. We always, because our R&D and production, all of it happens overseas, our order quantities are massive. So there is less room for error. I'm launching in the premium segment. There's no room for imperfection. If I'm expecting a consumer to part with 3,000 plus rupees from their pocket, I goddamn well better give them a solution that is worthy of that money. So whether it is packaging, whether it is the formula efficacy, whether it's the shelf stability, everything had to check out of the box for me to expect them to part that money and still come back to keep buying that product. So I looked at it from that perspective, and there was less room for error. So and that's kind of how we've done with every other product, because if you see, my first SKU was in the market for 1.5 years, and then I launched my second SKU. And each product has taken us this long. And sometimes, like, things have happened, like there have been unprecedented delays in launches, and some other brand has launched a very similar product. And that time I would be like, we should have not gone for that last 4 iterations. We should have just launched.
Now, going from 35 lakh of investments to the first 100 customers for your first product, could you kind of talk us through that? How did you spend the 35 lakhs? Where did you find the first 100 customers? Who were these customers?
I think 7-8 months before I actually took the brand live, I started running our social media. Like, I created the page and I was providing a lot of valuable information, and information that at that time nobody was talking about.
This was before you launched the product? Oh, okay.
I'd made Instagram page, and I had started talking about it. So I was running and I was making a lot of content, not videos that time. Video format wasn't there, but very informational, scientific content. So I had gotten, again, not a big audience. I'd gotten like 1,000 followers, but they were very engaged people, who, and then I started like teasing that I'm launching a brand. It's not massive in today's day and age. 1,000 followers is nothing. But I didn't launch to an empty room. So my first 30 purchases came from there.
Oh, okay.
And then word of mouth. I didn't have a marketing budget. So like that 34 lakhs that I invested, all of that went into my product development.
Okay.
Product development, R&D, and my first order that I placed. So all of that money went there. I didn't have that much money at all. So I was like, okay, I'll wait for 1 week's worth of sales. What that money comes, I'll put it into marketing. And that's really what I did. So I probably started, I didn't know what performance marketing is, how to run ads, nothing I knew. For a week we didn't, but we did a few things very right that got us organic virality, not virality, but at least that curiosity and a lot of shares and word, like the talk started in the industry. It's the way we launched. So my first 100 customers just came organically.
On Instagram?
On Instagram.
All of them were from Instagram?
Yeah.
From the page that you...
Yes. I have never asked anyone to buy from day one. It came organically.
And how does one convince somebody to do R&D for you? So there must have been a lab that you approached.
So that story is quite interesting. I mean, like literally when I decided I wanted to launch Dew, I booked a one-way ticket and I went to South Korea.
Okay. Nothing possible in India?
The formula that I wanted to build, it needed certain tech and capabilities and just a little bit more innovation in an R&D in skincare science that at that time, like see, South Korea is 12 years ahead of the global scale in terms of the innovation, and they put a lot of money in R&D, the country. So there is genuinely that much technology innovation, and today probably, yes, definitely it can be done in India. At that time, I thought that was the best bet. So I booked a one-way ticket and went. I don't know the language. I don't have a single contact in the country. I don't even know how to build a beauty business. Forget. I hadn't even incorporated my company that time. So I made a fake business card and I went and I just cold called and I kept asking people to give me meetings. So I started working with a lot of labs that I saw had potential and good labs. And they're wondering, who is this random girl? At that time, India ke saath business also, nobody was doing that
Nobody
much.
was doing it.
Today, yes, but that time, no. So they were used to working with the L'Oreals of the world. And this random girl, that too from India, who we usually don't work with, doesn't come with a team. She's coming, sitting alone and pitching to us. So it was strange for them. So I started working with many labs and getting them, like convincing them to work with me, tried to sell them the vision that I had. Some of them agreed. We started working. Some of them fell through. And then few that stood out, our long-standing partners even till date. We launched with a statement, I love chemicals. At that time when everyone was, go green, go organic and clean beauty. We're like, no, that science doesn't support this. So we kind of, pushed that status quo in terms of the messaging also we did. So it is the kind of customer we attracted, the customer who did question the status quo, the customer who was always hungry to learn more. So a very discerning, smart consumer. And that's that. And, Dew is not an impulse purchase brand. It never was. It's not a brand that we're shaping to build. It's always a consideration brand. And when you're building a consideration brand, a customer doesn't quickly convert. They think a lot. They ask a lot of questions to us, to other people, read things and then convert. And then when you take that much hard work to acquire a consumer, that consumer retains with you for much longer because they've not done an impulse purchase. So they tend to be happier with that purchase. But science doesn't support it. And actually, this is one of the main reasons I launched you, because I was tired of brands speaking to smart consumers like me and using fear as a tool of selling. Science doesn't demonize ingredients as good, bad, ugly. It's the dosage of any ingredient that determines its toxicity. Water can also be toxic in the wrong dosage. So I was like, I need a brand that speaks smartly to me and tells me how things are. I think that has been the single most successful strategy in building Dew that has worked the best for us. It's that we've kept such a lean product portfolio and that we have gapped our launches so far and wide. One reason for doing that is when I launched with the first product, the product was positioned as, it can do so many things for you. You don't need multiple products. So if I launch with multiple products, that would be counterintuitive. I'm not telling you the truth. So in the product proposition itself, it had to be that I had to go with one SKU. And when that worked, that strategy worked for us, that's when we started doing that. And a little bit, behind the scenes, it was also that we had a very lean team. So I would really take my own sweet time to perfect every product and launch. So that also added to the time. But the strategy worked in the sense that every product we launched got a long runway to establish a recall in the mind of consumers. So, and I've seen contra to this, like there have brands that have come with a very similar positioning, made in Korea, just like us, similar price point, just like us, very good branding also, good packaging, launched with 6-7 products at a time. Brands shut down in 1.5 to 2 years. So you can have like great products, you can do all things right. But today the clutter and saturation in the market is so much. A consumer comes on your website in 2 seconds, they make a decision. If you're going to confuse them in 2 seconds, they will drop off. If you're lucky, they may come again, spend some more time, drop off again. The 5th time, they might make a decision. So you have to make that 2 seconds very valuable and fruitful. So the lesser confusion, the lesser options you provide them, the quicker they make a decision, the quicker the conversion for you. Because we've always been very hands-on. And I think every founder should be in the first 2-3 years very hands-on. Because when you start delegating in your year 4, you know the challenges that your team faces because you've done those things. So I have written copies, I have done customer service, I have packed orders, I've done everything. I was, from a peon to a CEO in my first year. I actually did my first hire after 6 months as an intern. And then she went on to be a growth manager. So, you have to get dirty. Like, I think in 11 months when I strongly, and I'm always like a little stricter with all benchmarks. So maybe it could have in reality been 6-7 months. But things like your retention rate, obviously, but like one customer is buying 6 bottles in a year in 11 months. That's so they're not just because I know a bottle will last you 3 months. So you're not just consuming, you're also gifting it. So that's how much you gift only when you build, especially in skincare and stuff. You don't gift. Everyone's skin is different. So you don't want to take that risk unless you believe in a product so much. So we were seeing a pattern with customers buying 6-7 products in a year. So obviously there was that much belief. And that's when also I started realizing the brand is growing a lot through word of mouth. So for us, defining how we hit PMS was retention rate and how quickly you're selling through your stock. Something that not a lot of people know is that from the most mass and masstige brands to, I would say, premium brands, legacy brand segment is a little different. Their markups are much higher, but mass to premium all operate at the same markup. So your 4 to 5x is like a minimum markup that's there. Primarily your cost of goods, which would be, like a 20 to 25%, that determines your final MRP. So if something is being sold for 500, 100 to 125 is the COGS. And we all operate in this margin only. So if a brand is premium, that product making cost is slightly higher. So you can buy a licorice extract powder for 30 rupees a kg versus 30,000 a kg. Also, there are gradients in ingredients, potency and claims that ingredients come with. So depending on what you're using for the formulation, how it drives up the efficacy and potency, your costs are going to change. Then that's that. Then ideally more than 30% of your MRP should not be a marketing cost. If it is more, then you are a push brand. You're not a pull brand.
30% is that
it should ideally be in the between the 15 to 19% range.
Achha.
But at a max it should not 30%. Be above 30%, because then you're a push brand. And right now, unfortunately, in the industry, what is happening with so many people launching beauty, because see, beauty from a consumption perspective is going through a boom, but what I feel is happening is the rate at which brands are launching is faster than what the consumption rate is increasing. It is also in the industry, it's becoming a climate of survival of the fittest. While we see so much about fundraising stories and how many brands are launching, there is also silent graveyard that's happening, that brands shut down in 1.5 to 2 years in this industry, because it's a push market right now, and everyone's trying to get that same consumer to buy.
So out of this, say suppose 500 rupees, we said 25% was COGS. This includes packaging, right?
Yeah. 30% is your
30% marketing. So 55% ho gaya. Is there any other costs?
Then your shipping, your warehousing, your storage, your commissions like, your Shopify and your payment gateway, cut karke. 15-20% should remain.
15-20% is what the margin remains.
But what is now happening and why they say that you're not profitable on unit economics is because 30% is not remaining marketing. Like it goes to 45-50. Because it's a push market.
So basically the variability when it comes to unit economics comes to how much are you marketing and what percentage of the product.
See, an ideal case scenario is what the 30% all of that we shared, that in every unit that you sell, you should ideally be profitable. But today that's not happening for any brand, because CACs have increased so much because it's a push market. Everyone is vying for acquiring the same consumer. So the way to get profitable is on your LTV. And that comes with good retention rates, which means your product efficacy. You'll convince a customer to buy from you once. And there are many ways to convince someone to buy from you once. You have fancy marketing, your packaging is great. All of these are filler things. Ultimately, if the efficacy is not there in the product. So first purchase, kar doge. Spend money, kar doge. But them having to come back to you not once, twice, thrice, 4, 5 times a year is going to give you a high LTV, is going to put you in the green of profitability.
Say suppose you were starting a beauty brand today. So you don't have due and you're starting a beauty brand today. What are the 3 steps or 3 pieces of advice that you would give to, say, our audiences who are wanting to be
Truth
founders?
be told, and I say this every day to my team also, I wouldn't start you if I had to start it today. See, for a brand to work, there are a lot of things have to go right, and a big part of it is also timing. Right time, right place. I think we launched Dew before the eyes were saturated with the kind of brands that are being built today. So the timing was right, and we did the right things at the right time. Like we also built it right. Even if I adopt the same strategy today, it may not work.
Yeah, awesome. I think I could go on for another hour.
Yeah. We could talk all day, but have we hit the mark?
To know more, but I think we are running out of time. So thank you so much, Shamika.
Likewise, Varun. It was wonderful chatting. And
this was fantastic. Got to learn a lot about how Dew was built, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Varun.